Welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast, episode number 2. I'm Dan, and tonight I'm joined by the same two co-hosts as last time. Hey guys.
Hey guys, how you going?
Hey everybody.
Alright, so we've got, I'm just going to jump right into it with this one, and we have a massive amount of news to talk about. And the first news is that we just have to really thank everyone for their support with this podcast. We've had an unbelievable amount of downloads and feedback, and even someone's created a new module for Home Assistant, which is just amazing. So yeah, just thank you for jumping on board and showing us that it's actually, worthwhile, and we actually have people listening. I think I've been updating the guys a bit over the past couple of weeks with the number of downloads we've been getting, and it's just been blowing us away.
What's the download count now?
1725.
That's amazing.
That's super neat.
Yeah, so that's more than my most popular podcast get in like 2 months. All right, so 0.46 was released. Was it last week?
It was last week.
Yeah.
This weekend is the next release coming up this weekend.
Yeah, so there are actually a couple of breaking changes in this one. 3 with automation, actually. So the automation state trigger is now ignoring attribute changes.
Which I believe is things like associated with the attribute of the entity, not the state. Is that right?
Yes. So, yeah, because if you're monitoring the state and an attribute changes, I think in the past it triggered that it triggered the automation rule, which is, it's a breaking change.
So if a device was on and then say the power level increased, it will no longer trigger the on event.
Yes.
Right.
Perfect.
Yeah, and a breaking change because, of course, everyone would have gotten used to it, and now they've changed it to behave correctly, and hopefully no one's relying on the incorrect function. The after keyword is changing to at, because it is, describing it better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only for the trigger, not
yes.
the conditions. I got caught out on that one.
Yeah, so you've put a note in here, watch your phone replaces.
Yes, that's, yeah. Got caught in that one too, so.
Yeah, and above and below, if they're the same value, they won't trigger.
So the values now have to be above as opposed to equal this value.
Yes.
Correct.
So that also makes sense because it's, above and below, you expect it to, be more than what you've specified. I think I've actually come across that a few times and gone, eh?
Yeah, I think this will avoid a lot of confusion, especially for new people starting out with Home Assistant. Why did this automation fire? What doesn't make sense? Now, when you're reading it, it should fire at this time, should be above this value, as opposed to these little quirks existing.
Yeah. And that goes back to kind of our simplification of home automation piece that we were talking about last episode, right? So
No, absolutely.
Yeah, it's
more logical, so.
Yeah, working to, make the product a lot more, less technically able friendly as Paulus mentioned on a YouTube video that he appeared on recently, that things like hash.io, they were kind of working to try and make it accessible to the masses.
Yeah.
Some other changes. You can now specify icons for presence devices.
That's been asked for a lot, so that's a good one.
Yeah, I don't know why. That's actually a big one for me. It's one of those things where it just makes things easier, right? Visually, when you're looking at something, it's just like, oh, okay, boom, this icon you associate to whatever.
And
right?
you could set an icon for everything, but not presence. It's good that that's finally there.
Yeah.
And Netgear Arlo cameras, they made it.
Yeah, that's a good one because those cameras are so cool.
And they're easily available
cameras.
as well.
Yeah, so I've actually got a pair of those as well, right? And it's funny. So I actually stopped using them specifically because they weren't in Home Assistant. And well, that's one of two reasons. The other reason was the batteries were really expensive. So,
right.
But yeah, that's definitely a really nice to see addition in here.
And finally, and some Z-Wave gets some love with a secure network key can now be set directly in the Home Assistant configuration YAML file, which I think has been causing a lot of confusion for everyone that wants to use Secure Z-Wave and didn't know where to add that key in. Now it's much simpler.
So it was out in an external configuration file, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, and it depending on your operating system, could be in a very random location.
Gotcha. All right, so upcoming features. Phil, do you want to take the lead on
Yeah,
this bit?
so 0.47, so we are right in between the release cycles at the moment. So I've gone through and taken a look at what's coming up. A couple of new platforms. First one, people that love weather or can't get enough, Yahoo weather platform has just been added by Fabian. So that's a good addition, especially for those that don't want to fiddle around with API keys for dark sky or anything like that. Another one is the Sesame Smart Lock is now going to be supported. Now, for those that don't know, Sesame Smart Lock is a Kickstarter campaign that launched about 2 years ago. They haven't yet launched the Wi-Fi adapter. It's overdue. But Trisk, or Albert, on GitHub has already put in a pull request for that new platform. So that's awesome that Home Assistant will officially support Sesame before Sesame even has released all their hardware. So great work there as well. And now we've also got some new features that I thought were really cool. We were just talking about templates and icons before. The ability for icons to be defined as a template, which is really handy if you don't like door window sensors to have the on-off state in Home Assistant. You can now change them to open, close, and have a little open door, closed door icon as well. I think
That's really cool.
Is a really cool one. There's also, for people that have a Nest thermostat, you can now directly set the away and home modes for those thermostats. I don't have Nest. Do any of you guys have Nest?
No, but I'm surprised that wasn't a function and that new.
Like I've got an Echo, but
yeah, perhaps there's an API that's just become available, but that's a really cool one to have. I know a lot of automations people do use the presence of, is the Nest in away or home mode, so it'll be good to at least set that from Home Assistant as well now. And finally, a little one which I liked is Radar, which is very similar to Sonar for people that want to manage their TV shows. Radar sensor is now coming into Home Assistant as well.
Nice.
Yeah, I didn't know that there was a Radar as well because I use Couch Potato, but I'm presuming that I might like Radar better.
Yeah, I did. Like I flipped over to Radar from Couch Potato about a month and a bit ago, and it's so much nicer. It's so much easier to work with, and relative to Couch Potato. I've actually never gotten Couch Potato to work properly as it should. It'll work for like 3 weeks, and without me touching it, it'll randomly break. So Radar I've found to be more stable.
Just like Sonar over Sickbed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Basically.
Fantastic. Is it by the same people? Because it looks exactly the same.
Yeah, so Radar is a fork of the Sonar project. I don't know if it's the same people, but they've taken the code from Sonar and adapted it for movies.
Yeah, it's UI-wise, it's pretty much exactly the same. So
awesome. Sorry, that was a massive sidetrack, but anyway.
And then in general news, we had a lot of news for smart speakers coming out last month. Trigger warning, I'm going to start using keywords, so if you have an Amazon Echo or Google Home, just chuck them on mute now. So first up, Amazon recently announced their new Echo Show, which is their video calling device. And along with that, they announced Alexa device calling. That was cool. But now, in the last week, they've very under the radar released finally reminders and the ability to name your timers, which I think
awesome.
Everyone has been asking for a long time. So good to see Amazon doing that. With that, though, Google I/O did announce that they will be launching Google Home in many new markets. Canada, I believe, has already gone on pre-sale for Google Home. Have you started seeing any ads or anything, Rowan? Have you pre-ordered one?
Yeah, Best Buy has been doing crazy email marketing campaigns. Like pretty much every couple of days, I'm getting an email saying, "Hey, you can pre-order a pre-order a Google Home and we'll toss in a Chromecast for free kind of thing. So they're the only ones that I've seen that I follow. I'm sure there's others out there that are doing it as well.
From memory, I think
So
Best
it's
Buy
definitely
in the
huge.
US, it was a launch partner as well in the US when Google Home came out.
Yeah.
So
So
that makes sense.
it does, but what's actually going to be interesting for me now is this actually puts them behind the Echo. So the Echo is still not available here in Canada.
Absolutely.
So that's always been a huge request for people, right? Like, I mean, there's actually forums dedicated to, or websites dedicated to getting, how do you get a Echo in Canada?
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys have Amazon has an official presence in Canada, don't they?
They do. There is an Amazon.ca website, which makes it even worse, right? Because you've got the presence, you've got all this, you own the licensing.
Absolutely.
For the most part, at least from what I know. I don't know if there's any patent infringements or something that they're stepping on if they come into Canada. That could be, I'm not sure what it is. But even now, for me, with my Echoes, I actually have to say, hey, what's the weather in Toronto, Canada, rather than, hey, what's the weather?
Yeah, exactly the same here. And what's really annoying is Amazon seem to be, fighting against international users outside of, the UK, Germany, or the US. If you don't live in those three countries, you can't specify what your address is for the weather. Whereas if you were to import a Google Home device, it will happily use any location you've got already in your Google account. So I think, Amazon really have to be careful here. They're really getting threatened by Google Home, now launching into 5 markets compared to their 3.
Still no love for New Zealand with either product, though.
Oh.
That's okay. No one remembers New Zealand. They just think you're an island off Australia anyway, so...
Yeah, it's like all the maps that miss New Zealand.
Yeah.
New Zealand's the last to see anything.
I believe there's a subreddit for just that, maps without New Zealand on
there
Reddit.
is.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
Yeah, because I have an Echo and 3 dots placed around the house, and it's such a pain. And it doesn't do very well with my New Zealand accent either.
Course,
yeah.
You probably have similar problems with your Australian accent, Phil.
Yeah, yep, definitely. Yeah, sometimes you have to pronounce Melbourne as an American accent, as you can.
No way, that's funny. Yeah, I don't seem to have that problem here, I guess. Just Canada.
But it is surprising that Amazon are dragging their feet launching in Canada, where they already have a presence. There's rumors that Amazon are launching here in Australia sometime in 2017. Will they bring Alexa out here? Not so sure just yet. But what was even more interesting now is last week, the Apple Developers Conference came out, where Apple announced the new HomePod, which they were very specific in not calling it a smart speaker. But I do think they are going to go for the smart speaker market eventually. At the moment, they're aiming it as a competitor to Sonos speakers with multi-room audio, but it does have Siri baked in. And what is the eventual plan with the relaxation of the Homebridge software hardware requirements? You can now, once you buy a HomePod, you'll be able to control any Homebridge compatible devices. So, Siri, turn on the living room lights will be something that you can say to this dedicated speaker. So they're not calling it a smart speaker yet, but once more companies come on board, I think Apple will have a competing product against Alexa and Google Home, definitely. But what was interesting is they're launching in December this year, and their launch countries are actually going to be Australia, the United States, and the UK. So the US and UK, where Google Home and Amazon Echo are already launched, they are obviously getting the HomePod straight away, but also Australia, where at the moment neither device is launched, is also set to get it. Google Home is coming here sometime probably around September, I would say, for Australia.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you're getting it in Australia. And I'm a little annoyed that they're doing multi-room audio because I've invested thousands of dollars in Sonos speakers, and I just can't justify, even though we're an Apple household, I cannot justify the move.
Well, what's interesting is the speakers only available for Apple Music. There's no Spotify, there's no Pandora. You literally have to be tied in, like you're going to have to love Apple Music if you want to use that HomePod.
and this is kind of my problem with the Apple ecosystem, right? I mean, even if you look at Siri, it's great, but it's not a Echo or it's not a Google Home. They're really trying to capture that market, and I don't know. I feel like they're almost. I don't want to say they're missing it, but I don't think it's as fully flushed out yet as the other two.
Siri, not Siri. Amazon Echo is going to be tying in with Sonos at some point, which is awesome because at the moment, Alexa can't hear me if there's music playing on the Sonos.
Yes, I have that problem too.
Overriding it.
Although on that topic, they did promise that was coming out first quarter of 2017. About a month ago, Sonos pulled their advertising video promising the Alexa integration off their YouTube channel. The video is there, it's just been unlisted. So I'm not sure if that means there's not going to be an Alexa Sonos integration or if the advertised integration isn't going to work.
Huh, that's interesting. It's and I mean the other piece with this whole Apple thing is I don't see them really opening it up like in terms of me being able to slap Siri on a bunch of devices as well, right? Apple likes to keep their control. I'm hoping that's the case that they do. I don't know if they talked about it, but as an example, the Ecobee 4, which ironically is not available in Canada. It's a Toronto-based company. So the Ecobee 4 is supposed to embed the Alexa capabilities into it, and which is super neat. So I can walk by to my thermostat and say, "Hey, turn on the lights" or something like that. I don't see an Apple doing something like that, unfortunately.
Absolutely not. And I think Alexa has a Raspberry Pi version available for developers to use, and so does Google Assistant. You can get Google Assistant on the Raspberry Pi for your own little DIY projects.
Exactly. So and
I can't see Apple allowing that for Siri.
No, and that's the problem. So
yeah, I think from my point of view, being a biased Australian, I think Amazon really need to do something here. They've got Google and Apple coming after them now, and I am afraid that Alexa's days are going to be numbered unless they really open up to more international markets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I second that.
So hopefully next year we'll have better news with where Alexa's coming to.
Yeah, and I hope everyone has actually muted their Amazon Echoes.
Oops.
I think wasn't there a Super Bowl ad where it was the Amazon Echo order this thing, and a whole lot of people's Amazon Echoes did order whatever it was.
There was also a news report in one of the states in the US where they were talking about a girl. She said, "Alexa, order me a dollhouse." And then, obviously, a dollhouse got ordered to the parents. So then the news team decided to run a news article about this for the 6 p.m. news. And everyone watching the 6 p.m. news had a dollhouse ordered for them. So Amazon had a lot of refunds to issue.
That's funny. Burger King did some kind of advertising like that as well in North America. I don't remember what platform it was for. It was either for the Echo or the Google Home. And they basically utilized it, but their entire campaign was based on it, which I think was kind of cool.
Which I think it was Google Home, and Google quickly shut that down. They were able to detect when that ad was playing and ignore whatever was being said.
Yeah, it's a bit scary, really, isn't it? I have friends that mess with the Echo all the time when they visit.
Yeah, and I really just like to point out a whole bunch of people probably do have dollhouses ordered now because I'm pretty sure we did we did say that. So our bad.
Yeah, they need to add, like voice print recognition or something really futuristic like that to so you have to, register the people who are allowed to use it in your house.
Yeah, and actually, it's funny you mentioned that. So that's actually one of the things where, so again, like I said, I've got a couple of Echoes around the house, but Google Home can now do that capability where if I talk,
who's talking
exactly versus somebody else, right? So,
and that's something that people have been asking Alexa to do for quite some time as well.
Yes.
Yeah. It's that one I heard was that one as well as whole home audio for the Echo. I heard was and again I don't know how true this is, but I heard it was a patent thing.
Which makes sense why they were trying to partner with Sonos, perhaps.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's it for the news, is it?
Yeah, that's it for the news.
I think so.
Thanks for pulling all that together, Phil.
That's all right.
So we had actually a few requests. I had an email from someone. I'm really sorry. I can't remember what your name was. Asking for exactly what Bluetooth presence I was using. So I sent him the links and all my configuration and everything so that he could set it up. And I think we had a couple of requests and comments and Reddit and all over the place. Actually, I think it was the Gitter chat room, that specific one. Anyway, so for our first focus topic, I thought we'd talk about Bluetooth presence, which comes in multiple forms. I'll give you a bit more of a summary about mine, and then Phil's going to tell us about his as well. And I think Rowan's even started to get into the Bluetooth low energy, so maybe
literally as of yesterday
that as well. Yeah. So I'm using iBeacons. They're just generic, like $10 iBeacons that arrive. And I can't remember if I said this last time or not, but they come with a default ID. So I probably spent a couple of hours going, why is it telling me that all these beacons are all in all the rooms at the same time? And it's because all the beacons come with a default ID and you actually have to program them. I didn't realize that, so it took me a while to figure that out. So that's something very important to check if you are going to get into iBeacons. And I'm using Happy Bubbles, which is a ridiculous name.
So is Happy Bubbles the software or is it a hub?
I guess it's the product name. All due respect to the creator of Happy Bubbles, but it's a terrible name. Basically, it's a ESP. What is it, 286? Or whatever it is. I can.
Yeah, the 8266 probably.
Yeah, that's the one. So it's that with a Bluetooth low energy module basically added to it, and some software, and it just publishes all the Bluetooth low energy devices it can see with their ID and the signal strength. And when I plugged them in, I had like 30 Bluetooth low energy devices. Like all our phones and my
smartwatch or door,
smartwatch, doors, Apple TV, just everything. All our computers as well. It was just unbelievable. It's like, wow, that's a lot of Bluetooth. And of course, because it's low energy, you're not kind of seeing it in like the pairing, like these devices are around you. But the Happy Bubbles are detecting them, and it publishes to MQTT, and you can just consume it that way. But it also has a presence server, which takes the topics. So basically, it's publishing to Happy Bubbles / beacon / ID, and it takes all the data and collates it together and publishes a Home Assistant topic with the name you've given the beacon and the name of the receiver that it's closest to. So I've got 4 receivers basically in the 4 outer corners of my house to keep them as far away from each other as possible. So that tells me with pretty decent accuracy actually where the tokens are.
And so you wear these tokens in your wallet or in your pocket and just walk around the house to detect where you are in the house?
Yeah, so funny story. I said to my wife, so there's 2 options for keeping the lights on when you're in the room and not moving. One of them requires you to carry a token around with you everywhere you go. And the other one is $1,000. I think Ben, Home Assistant community member, did a review video on the other one, which is the kind of echolocation grid thing.
Yes, the Xandom Smart Home, I believe it's called.
Yeah. So but by the time you buy 10 of the devices and import it into New Zealand, it was about $1,000 New Zealand dollars, which is about $600 US, which is a lot of money.
Still pretty steep.
Yeah, so she chose to carry the iBeacon.
Interesting. So was there any options to use Bluetooth presence from your mobile phone or anything like that, like using a virtual token or something like that, or?
Yes, yeah, so absolutely. But we're terrible at leaving our phones behind in rooms, so
Yeah.
it's easier to have the iBeacon on a carabiner and then just clip it onto whatever clothes you're wearing that day, so then you don't forget it.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So it's really cool and it works really well. There's about a 3 or 5 second delay because it waits for so that it doesn't your location doesn't change as you walk past the various receivers. It waits for 5 or 10 beacons before it changes its mind as to where you are.
So does that mean you would walk into, say, the bedroom and there'll be a bit of lag time before the lights would turn on?
Yeah, I've paired it with motion sensors.
Okay, great.
So motion sensors turn the lights on and then the iBeacons keep the lights on.
Yep,
so that way
sense.
It's instant.
Yes, that's much more user-friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like I said in the last podcast, it's all about combining data. It's not about having, one solution. It's about linking them all together, which gives you the power.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no perfect, right? There's no one single silver bullet solution where you can say, hey, this will do everything for me. So
exactly. I did see, speaking of like room presence and everything, so one of the really old time home automation blogs, this guy was using Mr. House. And he built basically a IR brake sensor into the door frame, and he had it at the front and the back of the door frame. So as you walked into the room, you'd brake one and then the other, and as you walked out of the room, you'd brake the other one first.
You'll do it the other way, yep.
So that way it could keep a perfect count of how many people were in each room. And it's so funny because he's talking about, like sprinting through doors, trying to track the sensor, and apparently it was pretty much perfect.
That's really neat.
But that kind of requires, drilling holes in door frames, so that's not really an ideal solution.
Yeah, you'd also need a way to make sure that you can keep count of how many people are in a room at any one time. Keep that count accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it gets a bit tricky if you've got multiple ways to get into a room, I guess, as well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting because in the I guess office world or the professional world, this is actually a challenge, right? How do we count people? How do we from an emergency perspective?
Yeah.
Right. If your office
even
is
in
on fire, how
retail,
do I think?
Retail like to know how many customers are coming into a store just for their stats.
Yeah, so professionally, I actually work with quite a bit of that kind of stuff in terms of how do you map people, right? Like what are some hot zones, what are some cold zones? It's Bluetooth itself is actually a really interesting technology for a lot of that kind of stuff, BLE specifically, right? Bluetooth Low Energy. So it is pretty cool in terms of what we're doing.
I found it fascinating to learn that our roads authority here in Melbourne, they have Bluetooth beacons set up on traffic lights, and as your car goes past with your Bluetooth-enabled radio, they'll detect where you are at that time and then be able to use you moving down the road to see how fast traffic is moving and then adjust the road signs to say, traffic's busy up here and your estimated time of arrival is going to take you 12 minutes based on the Bluetooth in your car radio traveling down this road.
Yeah,
Yes, isn't it?
I was gonna say there's a slight Big Brother aspect to that too, but and that's the other thing, right? Is privacy around all of this as well. Like when it's in your own house, it's sure you and your family or you and whoever you're with, but when it goes outside, there's tons of concerns.
Big Brother is always watching.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I've kind of resigned myself to it now. It's like Google location history. Google knows everywhere that you've been if you have a phone that tracks it.
And then at the end of the month, you may have visited 3 new places this month. Click here to see what they were.
Yeah.
That is true. And then there's other ones where like different cloud services where you opt in, right? So as I was saying earlier to you guys, I invested in the tracker devices or Track R, which again is basically a cloud-based service that I'm consenting, saying, hey, here was my last known location of my keys of my car.
Yeah.
Right. So.
All right, so I have I'm also using Bluetooth in my apartment here. Haven't gone the iBeacons route. We are literally just using our phone. So my fiance has a iPhone and I have a Google Pixel Android phone, and we literally have one of those USB Bluetooth trackers. It's the size of your thumb, plugged in to my Home Assistant computer, and as soon as we walk into the apartment, maybe within 30 seconds, our phones are detected and lights start switching on and the house knows we are home. It's great for an apartment, but if we had a house where, multiple rooms, multiple floors, we'd probably need to go something like you've done, Dan, and look into beacons and multiple stations which can monitor where people are coming in from.
Mm-hmm. So what would you guys say would be an advantage of going Bluetooth over something like a Zigbee or Z-Wave or some kind of other presence sensor?
Yeah, I think
It's
Bluetooth.
cheap.
It's very cheap. Everyone has Bluetooth, so if you've got a guest staying over, they've got their Bluetooth on their phone that you can easily track. They don't have to sign up to your Wi-Fi network or anything like that. As soon as you find out what their MAC address is on their phone, you can just add that to Home Assistant. They don't need to enable anything else. That's it. It's literally set and forget.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem with an automated home is, teaching the guests how to use the house.
Yes.
The house now comes with an instruction manual.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, we haven't actually had any guests since I've really kind of got into it this time around, so it hasn't been a problem yet, but no doubt it will. Still haven't quite decided how to fully tackle it yet.
I have an input Boolean switch when guests are staying. It turns on and off, disables certain automations for them that they wouldn't understand necessarily.
Right.
I think
that makes sense.
the best way to go.
I'm doing the exact same thing, Phil.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably not a bad idea actually. I really should get my my HA config into Git so that people can see it, because I've got, we've been talking about all this stuff and people go, how have you configured that? And it'd be much easier to, go,
Point
well, here's
to
the GitHub
where it
repo.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite things about the community, though, is how many people have done that. I've learned more from looking at other people's config than I ever did from the docs.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's interesting to see how many people can do the same thing, but in different ways.
Yes.
Some people will use a script and have arguments for that script. Another person might use a scene, or someone will just do it purely in automation. So there's definitely, you can pick up a lot of different ways to do things as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating how many different ways people have worked out how to do things. All these undocumented things as well that people have worked out how to do.
Absolutely.
So at the top of the show, I mentioned that someone's built a little package for Home Assistant for our podcast, which I thought was really, really cool. Basically a YAML file pretty much has been created, which will send you a nice little alert when a new episode of our podcast has been released. I was pretty pleased about that. 'Cause it's like, well, you actually care enough about the podcast to know as soon as it comes out.
I thought it was a great use for the RSS component as well. So great work, Carlos.
Yeah, and a use
a lot.
of the component that I didn't know was possible. I think that we ended up actually getting through that a bit faster than I thought. We're at about 40 minutes, but I think that's not too bad of an episode. That's, a kind of an average commute in a decent sized city.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And as much as I enjoy listening to 3-hour podcasts, when you pick up on it again, you kind of have to go back 10 minutes to get back into the conversation. So I think I like the idea of, short little bits. All right, I'm going to edit this bit out because my brain's gone blank, but we do have someone coming on to talk about something in the next episode, I believe.
You have Peter from Melbourne talking about the
floor plan.
Yeah, floor plan. There you go.
A little tease for the next podcast in 2 weeks. We have Peter coming on to talk about floor plan, which is an awesome functionality which gives you, a nice map of your house. I still need to get around to actually, because our house is so old, we don't have plans for it. So I need to, get out the laser tape measure and actually work out the dimensions of my house to map it out properly. So basically, you take a vector graphic form and you put on your sensors and your lights and your switches and everything like that. So
a nice little map of where people are in the house and what's being occupied, I guess. Really smart.
Yeah, he's agreed to come on episode 3, and I think we might be getting Ben on episode 4 as well. So he'll be very interesting to talk to. Yes. And we should probably extend an invite to Paulus to join us at some point as well. He did say that he didn't want to be, deeply involved in the podcast, but I'm sure he'd like to come on and have a chat anyway.
Yeah, it'd be definitely cool to pick his brain too, so.
And it's going to have to be careful we don't turn it into a support session. As tempting as that might be. Thanks, guys. I think that's a perfect place to wrap it up.
Perfect. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks a lot.
See you next time.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.